Hey there. What's up, everyone? It is Edie Blue here, Artist Relations Manager at IndieFlow. And I am super, super excited to host our first industry sessions where we get to chat with music industry professionals and learn some of the tips, tricks, and tools of the trade. Woohoo! What's up, David Thomas? What's up, Raphael? Everyone, shout out where you're streaming in from in the chat. Hello, Khalil, Eric, Luke. Nice to see you, John. Andrew Lindsay, what's up? Eric Reed, what's up? So excited to see you all today. This is super exciting. Tell me, what are you guys excited to learn about today? Obviously, it's everything sync. What's up, Santiago? Ibri! Oh, wow. Yay. Okay, we got Raphael tuning in from Austin, Texas. Kevin, what's up? San Luis Obispo. I love that name. Oh my gosh. Who named I'm interested to know more about that name. Later conversation. All right, John Q from LA. Eric is tuning in from Anchorage. All right, Alaska, what's up? David Thomas. Yay. I think, David, you might be in Austin as well. So let me see if our guest is ready to join us, because I'd love for us to get straight into our questions. Give me 1 second. Let me just open my window up a little bit more. There we go. All right. So, all right. I see James is on the call. So I'm going to go ahead and invite him on screen so we can get started. Because we've only, oops, not Nick, James. Because we've only got an hour together today. And I know there's so much great information to be shared. So anyone tuning in, I know a lot of you all are IndieFlow artists and community members, but for those of you who are not, we have a very special discount for anyone who would like to sign up from this webinar. So if you're not an IndieFlow member, drop an emoji in the chat. James, hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm Edie. Very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. I'm excited to chat with you about all this.
I am super excited, and so is our community here at IndieFlow. James, where are you streaming in from?
Los Angeles.
Okay, cool.
I heard you talking about SLO, San Luis Obispo.
Oh yeah, have you been there before?
I have. It's a wonderful, wonderful town. It's like, it's north of here on the coast, about maybe like 2-3 hours, maybe 4 hours actually. It's a little further north from here, but it's great.
Yeah, that California coast is.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's like, in my opinion, it's like the best part of the California coast, but the SLO area. So
I'm sure
Kevin's doing great. Yeah.
I actually spoke to Kevin this week. So yeah, like he's like, slow town. Okay. Slow town. I like that. Well, James, first of all, let me just say thank you so much for coming to our first industry sessions and sharing your knowledge with us. We really, really appreciate it. So kudos to you for being here. Why don't we start by, I'd love to hear a little bit more about Burnett Music Group and what you all do over at Burnett Music Group.
Sure. Well, the first thing is we're a music publisher. And for people that aren't familiar with what a music publisher does, I'm sure some people on this call are, or on this conference are familiar with publishing. But for those of you that are not, a music publisher has 3 main obligations. And so the first one is, and maybe the most important, is our job is to take written content and secure commercial releases of that content. So we're pitching it to A&R, managers, labels, all of these people to try to get your songs released by an artist that's looking to put out an album or a single or a record or whatever, somebody that the label's trying to build up, A&R is working on, that sort of thing. So we're providing songs to artists that don't necessarily write their own content, which is
Okay.
a lot more people than you would think. Second,
That's
second,
interesting.
in that it can either be pre-existing songs that are sent over to them, or we'll team up an artist with a songwriter, and that's somebody that we usually represent. We have them on a publishing agreement with us,
Okay.
and we'll put them in a writing camp or a session with that artist to create the content that will hopefully eventually be released and then streamed.
Okay.
The second obligation we have is all the administration duties. So we make sure that we're collecting all of the publishing income that would come in for any of these songs that have been released, anything that isn't released, that is used in other ways, which we'll get into.
Mm-hmm.
Also registering these copyrights, with the Copyright Office, with the PROs, with the CMOs, and just making sure that everything is that all the income is accounted for, because it is.
Yes.
There's so many people. Honestly, this is how I was connected with IndieFlow in the beginning, with Omer over there. But IndieFlow is a great company because you guys are kind of giving everybody the tools and the transparency of like, this is where all of this stuff is coming from, and this is what you need to do, which I think is great, because it's putting a lot of power and control into the artist's hands, which I really like.
Yes. We're all about giving the artists the tools they need to succeed. For those of you who don't know what IndieFlow is, we are a technology company. Sorry, just going to give a short plug.
No, go ahead.
Already did. We're a technology company. We've created a platform where we do everything from distribution, a streamlined EPK, project management, and marketing and promotions in-house, as well as one-on-one coaching, which is what I love and my role here at IndieFlow. So thank you, James, for that little segue for me.
Oh yeah, no problem. Well,
that was
this
like an alley-oop right there.
to the third thing. The third obligation is sync licensing, and that's so this can either be released content or non-released content. These are songs that have been recorded that we're trying to secure a license for, or get it synchronized with programmed content. So like, this is something, I guess, let me explain what sync is.
Yes, tell us what sync is.
So everybody assumes sync is video, like it's putting music to picture, and that's a lot of it. I'd say that's probably 90% of it, but not always. For example, if you're listening to the radio or a podcast or something, and there's a song that's playing during some intro segment, something that's programmed, something that's, if it's like the start of a podcast show or it's the start of a radio show, that's going to require a sync license, whereas the actual programmed content on the radio doesn't. So that's covered with the performance blanket. So there's that, but there's also when you go into Target, Best Buy, places like that, and they've got demo speakers and stuff.
Oh yeah.
For example, we licensed a song once to Bose for their in-store demo for their surround system, and for their in-store demonstrating or I guess it was their Bluetooth or Wi-Fi speaker system. I don't know, honestly. I never went to the store.
Bluetooth speakers.
Yeah, I was like, I never went into the store to demo it, but we licensed the song to it, and that was wonderful. But yeah, that's a sync license, so there's things like that, but I'd say the majority is TV and film, because it's the most common way to license or place to license songs.
Okay.
So we do a lot of that. We pitch for a lot of that content. The other thing that we do that typical publishers don't do, is that we have a production music library. And I want to explain production music because this is also where TV and film don't require a sync license. So production music it's all of the underscore music. If you ever watch like The Bachelor or
I
any
do actually, yes.
MTV shows or any of that, all of the music that you're like, who wrote all of that? That's production music. So those are composers that are writing. And a lot of these, I mean, I've got to use the term composer lightly because some of these people have film scoring degrees and film credits and stuff, and that's wonderful. But when you're watching like, MTV ridiculousness or whatever, a lot of that's like hip hop groove beds and stuff. And that's a guy that got a film scoring degree did not make that track. So, it's also, it's coming from indie artists that are also contributing content for these types of things. And there's a lot of production music libraries in the world. And the way this works is that content is covered by a blanket license, not a sync license. A blanket license means they have access to the entire library. For like places like MTV, it's usually for free because it's all counting on the back end, on the PRO, performance royalty income versus the sync license upfront fee. So it's kind of the opposite model of an artist song sync license. But we do a lot of that also. And that's essentially.
So you have a large library of music that's available to certain kind of like maybe TV shows or networks.
Correct. Okay. I mean, honestly, the way that we work is we get hired as the music provider for a production, and we'll contribute the library in that case. So like we'll be hired on, like most recently we did this NBC series called Baking It that it's on Peacock, guys, if you want to watch it. But it was a holiday cooking competition show with Maya Rudolph and Andy Samberg, and
hilarious.
Like lighthearted comedy, cooking, baking competition, and we were hired by the production to create all the content for that show, and in making custom original music, they also were using our library of pre-existing underscore. So
so what I'm hearing is Burnett Music Group, you have a library of music that's available to certain TV shows, networks. You also create custom music with your team of writers and creatives that are signed to publishing deals with Burnett. You also pitch artist songs for sync, meaning TV shows, movies, maybe advertising, but it sounded like maybe the majority is TV and movie. Is that correct?
Yeah, TV and film.
Okay, TV and film. Sync licensing, though, is also those songs that I hear on my NPR radio station as I'm driving in my car that transition between. I've always been wondering about that because they use a lot of hip hop beats on NPR. I don't know if anyone else listens to NPR. So that's also sync licensing, but primarily Burnett Music is in the TV film world of sync licensing. And you're pitching for, I guess, label artists as well. I know I've talked to a few artists who are interested in that track.
Correct. So, we have a couple of cuts with some big decent artists. Like we have a Black Eyed Peas cut and one with Celine Dion, which was actually from a giant sync license, which was really cool. That was for Deadpool 2. There's a lot of, we have some Kygo cuts and Mike Posner.
I love Kygo. Yeah. Awesome. So James, I'm curious because I see that guitar in the background. So I'm like, are you a musician? Tell me a little bit about your background and how you kind of like came to be, COO of Burnett Music Group.
Great. Okay. Well, I am a musician. I started out playing in punk rock bands and had a band back when I was in college that we got signed and we were touring for a while. Had a label deal. Actually, this was my first introduction to what publishing was. Because we ended up getting some songs synced on a Comedy Central show. It was like Rock and Roll Jeopardy or something. It was a weird thing to, and it was one of those moments where you get excited as a band or an artist and you hear your song on the radio, or you used to when radio was a thing. You would you would get excited when you heard your song play on the radio. It was like, oh my God, we made it. And it was like that feeling all over again when you heard your song on TV, and it was like, pretty cool. So, we were doing that for a while. The band ended up breaking up because that's what bands do. It's a lot of personalities to manage.
So true. So true.
And yeah, so we I'm from Colorado, and we moved out to Los Angeles. Me and the drummer, we were going to start a new band, and
Okay.
obviously that didn't happen. But but I'm classically trained. Also, I play the trumpet, and
What? It's my favorite horn.
oh,
For sure.
nice. Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I did a lot of orchestra and symphonic stuff, throughout my school days, and I'm very familiar with the orchestra and everybody's role. And I ended up getting a job assisting a composer working on a lot of reality TV shows, and and that kind of completed the circle from, okay, I understand now what a publisher really does. I'm kind of acting as a publisher, but not, it was, and also being a composer, and started to see like the revenue streams that I had no idea about. And throughout my career there, I came up from, assisting a composer to being the head of production at a company, and now being the COO of this publisher. And
that's amazing. Yeah. That's an incredible story, and really like shows the diversity of paths in the music industry, from being an artist to now being in a role with a publisher.
Exactly. 17-year-old me would never have predicted this.
I think most artists usually say the same thing, no matter where they are. Yeah. Just want to give some love to those in the chat. Ibri also loves NPR. Yes, you're not the only one, Ibri. And David as well. David also loves Kygo. David Thomas makes some really great pop music. Bruce saying, what's up? So we've got, a chat full of artists, James, and I know what they're dying to know is how to get involved in sync licensing. What is the process from them creating a song that's worthy of sync licensing, which from my experience, it seems that most good quality songs can find some sort of home in the sync world. I've seen all types of music licensed out here. But how do we go from creating the song to actually getting it placed in an ad or a TV show? What's the path for an artist to take?
Well, so there's no direct path. There's a lot of options here. So, let me start with the most lucrative path for an artist would be.
That's a good place to start.
Yeah, the one where you're going to make the most money is for you to find music supervisors, find brands, whatever, whoever the contacts are that are making decisions and using, licensing this music, and reach out to them and send them your music. That's the best way, because if you're able to issue the license directly yourself, you don't have to share that with anyone, unless it's a co-writer, or if you have a label or whatnot.
Sure.
I guess, you know what, let me back up 1 second, because I was talking about what a sync license is, and that is the synchronization of music to program content. But that synchronization requires 2 licenses. So it requires a license for the master recording, which is the actual audio that you're hearing, the recorded audio, and it requires a license for the composition, which is the publishing side, which is the actual written song. That's the right. Chords and lyrics and stuff, right? Yes. That's the sheet music, essentially, even though
that anyone else could recreate if they wanted to.
Correct. Which is where like cover songs come in, is that like, if a cover song is done, this is a tangent, but just to explain how to license a cover song. First off, not every artist is going to grant rights for for sync. I see a question. What is a music supervisor? Let me jump into that in a second. A cover song, if you're, so you don't own the composition, you're just recreating a new master recording of that. So if you
Right.
create that, if you do a cover of that song, you now own that master recording. And so you can ostensibly license that, and the artist would, or their publisher would hopefully sign off and license the publishing as well. It just may not be in line. Typically, you know, if it's the original recording and writing, it's going to be in line. If it's, you know, if it's $10,000 for the publishing, it's going to be $10,000 for the master. But if it's a cover song, those are the times where it isn't always lined up. It may be, you know, if you cover a Rolling Stones song or something, it may be that, you know, the publishing is $40,000 and they're going to want to pay you, you know, $1,000 for the master. So it's not always the same in those cases. Okay, so a music supervisor.
And just to be clear, if you make that cover song, if I make that Rolling Stone cover song, I'm not collecting on the publishing.
No.
That's the Rolling Stones. That's the people who own the composition of the song.
Correct.
Just want to be clear about that.
And it's the same, like, you know, if it's your song that's been released or registered with the copyright or is delivered with a publisher and somebody else records it, it's the same situation. You know, on the indie level, that's a cover song, you know, and that's exactly. You still own the composition to that. So, you know, this is really popular with remixes, especially in the pop and EDM world. You know, there's an original composition and the remix. You know, there can be 20 different remixes of this song, and you know, so there's 19 other master recordings of this. So, you know, there's a bigger chance for that stuff to be licensed, but and they, you know, it sounds different, but the same publisher on all of those. So
getting back to, you know, how an artist, you know, goes from creating the song to getting it licensed. You mentioned directly reaching out to music supervisors or people who have that decision-making power. Music supervisors, I'll answer that question, are often people who are in the position to say, hey, I need music for Love Island. I'm going to choose these 3 songs for what I need. So they're in that decision-making power with the film, with the TV show, with the ad agency to decide what music goes into what show, what TV, what ad, or what film. And you can find out who music supervisors are on the website imbd.com. So you can look. IMDb, sorry.
That's fine. Internet Movie Database. Yeah.
Thank you. IMDb.com. You can look up your favorite shows, and in the credits there, you can find out who the music supervisors are. So
I have another resource for you guys, and this is also good about kind of seeing what's trending or what kind of stuff is working if you wanted to go the direct route.
Yeah.
I will say it's very difficult to get in touch with these people because they're very, very busy and they're hit up by a lot of people constantly. I'd say at a high level, a lot of these people prefer to work with a publisher or a sync agency directly, and they don't really want to have to deal with the artists because artists can be not the most fun to deal with sometimes. Just you know, it's like a little bit of education, a little bit of you know, artists are more passionate about the content, and so they can get you know, it can get a little testy. But I mean, you're welcome to try. There's no harm in trying. So the site that I would recommend is called tunefind.com. So this is a way to find, you can see what's airing, what's you know, what's been synced in shows. So you can kind of look at say you have a song and you're like, man, this kind of sounds like Coldplay. You can go to TuneFind, look up Coldplay and see like where Coldplay was licensed recently and who the music supervisor was on that. So now you're like, okay, cool. I should maybe send my song that sounds like Coldplay to these 10 supervisors, you know, and if you can get their contact info, which isn't going to be listed there. That would maybe be IMDb Pro, which is not free.
Yeah.
But
maybe LinkedIn. Maybe LinkedIn if
maybe
you're
LinkedIn. It's going to take some internet research. But you know, it's 2022. We should all be pretty good at stalking people on the internet at this day and age. But
that
yeah,
might be
TuneFind is like,
another program.
yeah, but it's a good TuneFind's a great resource. And
Well,
yeah,
thanks
it's
for
just
sharing that.
it makes short work of like figuring out where your music may be applicable. So
Okay.
okay, that's the most lucrative approach, is for you to do it yourself. The other way is to sign up with a publisher. And the way to do that is send some of your best recorded content. Don't overload. I'd say the same thing if you're trying to find a sync agent. Don't overload anybody with music. You know, it's like we're receiving so much music every day. It's,
Yeah.
be patient, one, and don't send me 40 songs. Like, send me like 5. Because I'm going to be able to tell within, the first 2-3 songs, like if your production quality is up to par, if your song content, if you've got a vibe that's going to work, that is syncable, things like I'll be able to tell if I want to hear more from that sampling. I don't want to hear the entire library. I
No.
won't go through it, honestly. It's too much work. But
what about patience
yeah,
and persistence? Raphael dropped that in the how
that's
do you feel about
that's
people
exactly
reaching?
what it is. It's not.
Okay,
I mean,
cool.
don't like send something in. Be patient, but persistence. Yeah, like if you haven't heard anything in a week, feel free to send a follow-up email. If you haven't heard anything in 24 hours, please don't email. Like,
Take a chill
so,
pill and wait a
yeah.
bit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I understand it's like, it's exciting, and there's a lot of, like I said before, there's a lot of passion about this, but there's a lot going on here.
Here's a good question just on what you're talking about. Should you
Uh-huh.
send a collection of 4 minutes of short examples of songs? So like
Like
one
one
track
track that's like cut into,
that cuts from song to song.
you know, honestly, that seems like more work on your part that I don't think it's going to serve you well, because
Mm.
I would want to hear the whole song, honestly. Like, if it's a good song, I want to hear the whole song. I don't want to hear a snippet of it. I'd rather hear the full song.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Lyrical content's going to be important. Also, the tone of what's happening, the overall mood and vibe. So here's another thing about sync licensing. When you're thinking about this, if you have like really, really sad, depressing songs, those are going to have a much narrower window for sync opportunity. It's going to be, really dramatic, sad scenes in in scripted series, maybe dramatic moments, but there's not a ton of that stuff being used.
What do you feel like is trending?
The majority is always going to be positive, like uplifting, happier, especially if you're looking at like advertising, right? If you're going to get a song licensed in a Tide commercial, which would pay a lot, Tide doesn't want their customers to feel sad.
No.
Right? They want to feel good about using Tide. So everything needs to be, not to say that sad songs aren't selling. It's just it's a limited window. So
we've got one artist on here who makes very like moody, melancholy songs, amazing music. He's saying, well, me, that's done. But I'm saying, Andrew Lindsay, it just means
not necessarily. I mean, there are tons of series where, something very tragic happens, and
there are lots. I like those kind. I'm a crime drama
yeah,
fan.
there is. I'm just saying, like, if you were to break it down between positive and cheerful music, or just fun, lighthearted, music versus sad music, it's probably like maybe 70-30, like
okay.
more 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 positive, uplifting. So
Okay.
so it- positive, uplifting. It doesn't mean it has to be like major chord, happy time, snappy, peppy. It can also be just like inspirational feeling. So kind of triumphant. Like there's a song that
Mhm.
we've licensed a lot. Like for look at the beginning of American Ninja Warrior. This is a place where we've licensed this song before. It's like the song was called
So a
War
song can
Cry.
be synced more than once. That's a question in the chat right now.
1000%. Songs are synced more than once.
Great.
Uh, yeah, I mean, there is a point where it would reach, if it's a hit song and it's all over the place, like if it's synced everywhere, there's going to be, sync fatigue and people are going to stop using it. But,
Mhm.
because it's going to start to feel old. But yeah, these things, it's not like you get one placement and that's it. You can get several. Like this track I was referring to, War Cry, we've had at least half a dozen syncs with that one song. Because it's just a great like inspirational thing. It's this is my war cry. I'm gonna rise up. And
Yeah.
that's the thing. It's not like a happy peppy song. It's just got this like powerful inspirational message that works really well. I see somebody asking about life story songs. It depends on the life story. you know look, no song is going to be just flat out rejected unless it's really offensive. I heard an example from a music supervisor once. There was this guy who came from a pretty established band. I'm gonna preserve this guy's innocence, but
Identity.
yeah, but he came from a pretty successful band. He's a good songwriter, good producer, knows a lot of people. Started writing songs on his own and trying to get them out to supervisors and stuff. And there was a supervisor he was hitting up constantly about this one song that he had just delivered and asking like if there was any traction or if they're going to sign a deal or whatever. Can we get this? Can we get this? Going.
Okay.
And just the name of the track was to keep this PG was "Effing Nazis."
Ah,
And like, although I may agree with the sentiment of the song, because like yeah, effing Nazis, but like that's not going to get
people.
licensed. Like
Yeah.
you got to be self-aware about your content. If you're really offensive, yeah, look, and I mean that message is not necessarily offensive, but the language is, so
Got it.
there is no song or there is no production that's going to be like, oh yeah, let's license a song about how much we hate Nazis, like unless it's like an actual like anti-Nazi show, like, and then maybe, but
So so what you're saying is really like have some sense of self-awareness. Also, it sounds like what you said, like I love the percentage you gave. 70% is like positive. I think it's like uplifting,
mhm,
inspirational, like
inspiration.
overcoming struggle. Those are good themes for sync licensing. And 30% can be in the moody, melancholy vibe. Um, we've got a few questions in the chat here. Are you reading those? You want to answer some of
Let me
those
see,
for
what do
us?
we have here? Let's see, sync writing
Burnett.
camps. Yes, those are
Mhm.
things that happen often.
How would an artist get involved in something like that?
A publisher, typically.
Through
I
a
mean,
publisher.
that's usually how those are arranged and organized. It's usually us with we'll set up with a different you know a different publisher. All of the publishers are frenemies. You know what I mean? Like we're all competing, but we're all friends, and we all work
Okay.
together because we're all going for the same goal. It's just it's like if we can get a writer from our team to work with a writer from Universal, then we all win. So it's
Creating a win-win.
yeah,
So what about
yeah.
licensing? Here's another question we have here. Licensing more independent tracks, meaning
Mhm.
from artists, indie artists. Do you find that most of your sync licensing is coming from indie artists or artists that are signed to labels? And do the sync deal sizes change between the labels and the indies?
First off, those are great questions.
Right?
And
We've got
and
some smart people in here.
yeah, And yeah, so there's a lot of indie sync licensing, and I would say, currently the majority of our sync licensing is indie unreleased content, um, or it's released, but they're not, none of it's like, well, we don't have any Taylor Swift cuts, but like, it's not Taylor Swift. Like, I'd say out of the most recent, I don't know, 20, 30 plus syncs, like only one of them has been a noteworthy artist, and the rest have all been indie artists or unreleased content.
Okay.
The other one was a Kesha song, but
Okay.
Yeah. So,
And then what about deal sizes? I was under the impression that it was kind of like a production sets a music budget. So whether it's an indie artist that's taking that budget or a label artist that's taking that budget, the budget stays the same. But maybe you have some different insight
you're
on that.
no, you're correct, and I guess I can give everybody a different way to think about this, right? So,
Mhm.
a music supervisor's job is, to find the music to license and get it approved by the director or the executive producer or whatever, by the production team, and then to make sure all the contracts and everything are done. That's their job. They're the one in control of that budget, so they're given the budget to work with. The thing about that job is that they're trying to save as much money as possible, and our interests are just not aligned with theirs most of the time, because they're trying to save money, save room in the budget, and we're trying to take as much of the budget as we can because we want us all to get paid. So it's that is the constant struggle, is like they're going to tell you, oh yeah, we've got 10K for this, and they're going to be like, how about 15? And then it's like a swap meet basically, where it's like,
So negotiations happen, is what you're saying.
exactly, every single production there's a negotiation attached, like
So would
with
it
what
be
the fee is.
appropriate for the artists themselves to negotiate, or would you
if
say,
if they if they know what they're talking about, and if they're confident and they can provide comps and things like that, then sure. There's a lot of things that we would use to negotiate, like if a track is released, like how many streams it's got, is a big thing. What's the social engagement on this? Is there another track coming out really soon, or is a track about to be released? Things like that. These are all things that are negotiation tools. What's another artist that's like in the similar ballpark that we've maybe licensed to this supervisor before, and trying to get the same fee? That kind of stuff. It's just it all ultimately is going to come down to the budget they have, and some shows have huge budgets and some have nothing. So it's there's been licenses for $2,000, and there's been licenses for $100,000. It's just, and everything in between. I'd say common is in the 10 to 20K range.
Okay. Is it different too for, like, this is great. This is actually a question I had on the list, was to ask about like what compensation expectations could be for sync licensings. And I'm curious, are there differences between like a TV show ad versus a TV show versus a movie?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, a TV show ad depends on if it's going to be a local commercial, if it's going to be a national commercial, things like that. Those usually have decent upfronts. Also, like movie trailers, which are also considered commercials, advertisement,
Right.
and promo. Like those tend to pay very well, which makes them extremely competitive. So it's like, the things that the big ticket items are the things that everybody's going to go for, which makes it, competitive. But yeah, scripted TV also, those things are decent. And the other part of that is that, well, like in the US, you don't get performance royalties on master recording, but you do on the publishing. So
Mm.
you've got the
Well,
sync
let's talk
license. You're
indie
getting paid in,
artists who own their publishing.
yeah. So you've got the sync license where you're licensing your music to the show. You're getting paid an upfront fee for that, the sync license fee. And then on top of that, 9 months down the road, ASCAP and BMI will pay you a performance fee for that same placement. So that may or may not be a lot of money. It depends on how many times the show aired and what network it was on and
What
all of
about
that. But
internet streaming? Because a lot of people
mm,
watch TV shows on the internet now through streaming services. Do you make performance royalties when
you
someone streams
you
on
you do
Disney
you
Plus or
do
HBO or whatever?
you do, but so this is a can of worms.
Uh-oh.
So in the same way, you know, uh, a lot of artists see Spotify as a necessary evil, but but they're also reducing the rates, and everybody, the the amount of money that they distribute to artists doesn't necessarily seem fair. But
Agree.
yeah, streaming platforms, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, it's the same thing. It's because
Mm.
it's a different medium. Whereas like there's actual regulations set for broadcast and cable,
Okay.
um, for over the top streaming platforms. That's not really the case yet. I mean, they still have to secure a performance blanket license from the PRO,
Hmm.
which is what we would all get paid our performance fees from. It's just not, it's still pretty much the Wild West with that. Like, just giving an
Interesting.
example, on like a show that we would do on NBC. We'd get paid a really really good amount of money from the PRO for the NBC broadcast. That same show going to Hulu, um, would pay us, oh, I don't, maybe 1/100th of that fee. And the thing is, you can see like how many millions of people stream that one episode, or what, like,
Totally.
you can see the Nielsen ratings of what happened when it was on NBC, and you can say like, oh wow, 6 million people watched the show. That's great. Then you can look at, this thing was streamed 20 million times on Hulu, and instead of $20,000, I made $20. So it's
Ooh,
a it's a big
ouch.
difference, but yeah, I think that stuff is all, it's getting better. It's just turtle pace.
Turtle paste. Okay.
Yeah.
So just to kind of recap some of what we've chatted about, because we talked about how artists can get involved. So one was reaching out to music supervisors directly. One was
Mhm.
reaching out to sync licensing companies sync licensing agencies or publishers like
Mhm.
yourself.
Mhm.
We're talking about budgets and how really indie major, the budget for a project is still the same and can be from $2,000 up to six figures.
Mhm.
Um, and we won't open the whole can of worms of why streaming services, so streaming television shows, streaming movies doesn't pay as much, but you do
I'm talking
still
about, that's
make
I
it on
just
the
need to
back
clarify, that's for performance royalties, right? So that's for royalties. For the actual license, it's the same. So, like
end.
Netflix is
Okay.
going to pay a decent license to put a song in Lucifer, you know, whereas like it'd be comparable to what, I think was that on ABC, whatever, like,
I didn't watch that show. Yeah.
doesn't matter. But like, when it was on broadcast, it would have been the same or comparable sync license fee to get a song placed in that show. Um,
And so owning your
the performance
publishing.
royalty is different.
Okay. So performance royalty versus, so let's talk a little bit about publishing because a lot of indie artists don't use a publishing administrator. So one
Hmm.
of the perks of working with IndieFlow is that when you distribute music through us, we register your music with your PRO, and we
Hmm.
also register your music with Song Trust as a publishing administrator. So for an IndieFlow artist who gets a sync licensing opportunity, um, is it beneficial that they're registered already with with they've got the music registered with Song Trust, or they've got someone already collecting their publishing for them?
You know, that's great. I think that Song Trust would be great for you know, for songs that have been released and you're trying to collect publishing revenue from, you know, all of the different aggregators and distributors and streaming platforms like Spotify, you know, Apple Music, the billion other platforms that are out there.
Yeah.
You know, that's great that they're going to be collecting stuff from that. As far as performance royalties, I don't know that they're necessarily doing any better than ASCAP or BMI would do. As far as collection go, they would just be collecting it from ASCAP or BMI and then giving it to you. So it's, I don't know how I feel about that. And then, you know, if something travels internationally, then they would also be doing, hopefully, you know, a great job collecting your publishing revenue in the different territories where those would be reported to the PROs in those specific territories.
Okay.
And you know, if there wasn't somebody collecting that, it's a coin toss if you'd ever see that money. So I think it is good that Song Trust would be doing that. I did review Song Trust agreement because a little bit of the pregame that we had, you guys sent over, asking if there would be issues with sync licensing and Song Trust. And Song Trust, in their agreements, they have a carve out where they don't participate in traditional sync licensing fees. So or the licensing. It seems like maybe you can ask them to, if you wanted them to paper a deal or to be the administrator or to collect sync license fee, you could ask them to do. I'm sure they would happily do that. But
Sure.
But it doesn't prohibit you from working with a publisher or a sync agent to try and get your stuff pitched, shopped. So or doing it yourself. So yeah,
Awesome.
that's all good. But yeah, a publishing administrator is a good thing because it becomes a full-time job very quickly to make sure all of the stuff is registered where it needs to be, is registered correctly, all the clearance rights are in place, and all of the collection is being accounted for. You know, it's.
And is this something that you all do for the artists that you get sync placements with?
Well,
Administrative
we
publishing
have
as
different
well?
deals. So yeah, artists that we have on publishing deals, yes, that's part of our agreement. Artists that we don't have on a publishing deal, but we just have on a sync representation deal, which is essentially just that we'll shop your music and try to get sync licensing for it, but there's no obligation, you know, on either part, you know, aside from just that. With that, we're not going to be doing the pub admin stuff. Yeah, we're really just going to be participating in the sync licensing fee and nothing else. So,
Okay.
you know, that's the way that those deals work. As far as like a traditional publishing deal goes, it's like that's usually a co-publishing deal. So it's like if you're signed to a publisher and you're writing content, there's usually a term deal anywhere from 2 to 10 years that you're with a publisher, depending on an advance that they may have paid or not paid or whatever. And everything that you write during that term is subject to co-ownership. This is like standard. Not every publisher operates this way, but most do. It's a pretty standard deal that there's a co-publishing agreement for each one of those things. So in the case of us having an artist that we're representing and we're getting them in all of these sessions, and like somebody mentioned sync writing camps, if we're putting them in sync writing camps with other publishers or other songwriters and you know, or sync agencies that we're, you know, want to work with people on their roster, like we you know, we would co-own the publishing on all of those tracks that are created from, you know, from those artists, which is our incentive to get them working in those places, and then it incentivizes us to pitch their stuff harder. So that's kind of that's the benefit to a publisher, is that we own a piece of the publishing. Also, just need to clarify for you guys, because I'm not sure if you understand, you know, so you've got the two sides of copyright, the two pieces of IP for a song. You know, you got the master recording and the composition. The composition is composed of the publishing and the writer's share, and it's
Yes.
split up in you know, two different ways. You know, for this purpose. So as a writer, you own your writer's share. You own whatever part of the writer's share you have. Typically, you also own the same percentage of the publishing, unless you're signed to a publisher, where some percentage of that is either assigned to, you know, as ownership to the publisher, or you know, administered by the publisher or whatever. But you're getting your writer's share stuff directly, unless you've signed a deal where somebody is also taking your writer's share, which honestly I would not recommend. But that stuff you should be getting from your PRO directly.
Okay.
So, and the PROs do a pretty good job of collecting your writer's share for you. So you should be getting, you know, if you're signed up with ASCAP or BMI or CSAC in the US, you should be getting that stuff deal.
Okay. And as I mentioned, IndieFlow does register your music with your PRO. And I know, drop a emoji in the chat if you guys are still hanging with us, and if you'd like to learn more about IndieFlow as well, because I know we have some people on here who are IndieFlow members, but I also know we have some people on here who are not and would probably like some more information on us. And we have a very special deal today for anyone on the webinar. Our platform is 45% off today only. Okay, Mike and Bruce, thank you so much. Someone's gonna reach out to you. Yeah. All right. So I want to make sure
you guys are great, and there's a lot of really great questions coming in, and just
that's why I'm like, let's get to some of these questions. Do you want to?
To quickly answer Mike's thing. You know, the term of a publishing agreement is negotiable. Like every publisher is different. Every deal is different. It depends on where the artist is, what their skill set is. You may hear a term 100%er if you go into the songwriting space outside of writing for your own projects or whatever. You know, you may hear the term 100%er. That is something that every publisher wants and covets. That is a Ryan Tedder type person. That's somebody who can write and produce their own content. So 100%.
We have a few artists like that on the IndieFlow platform.
Yeah.
How would an artist like that, or any artist, get? This is one of the questions in the chat. Get a publishing deal with a publisher like you.
You reach out. You submit stuff. We do a lot of work trying to find people. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I love it when they find us. So, so
how do they? Well, tell me, how do they find you? I mean, obviously, you'll have a website. Do you have an open contact on your website? Are you?
Yeah, I mean, we have an info. We have an info at email that you can submit directly through the website. But honestly, anybody on this, can reach out to me. Just jt@burnettmusic.com is my email. Here, actually, I'll just pop it in the chat here.
I'm doing it right
now. Send me whatever. Whatever questions.
So nice of you, James. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I'm happy to share what I know. I'm sure there's definitely a lot that I don't know, but but I have a lot of experience in this space. So
that's awesome.
So yeah, feel free to email me stuff, and I'm happy to check it out. Yeah, thank you, Mike.
Someone asked, are you looking for particular genres of music? Are there any times where you're actively looking for songs? I kind of went with what I asked earlier. Is anything like trending specifically right now?
Always looking for songs. Always there is no such thing as a shortage of music as far as a publisher or a sync, representative is concerned. We need. There's never too much music. So the genres that are the most common, honestly, you can find places for really obscure things, but the most common things are obviously going to be pop, hip hop, electronic rock stuff. Honestly, pop punk stuff is coming back with MGK and all that. But also orchestral, guys that are able to do orchestral, scoring stuff too. There's a whole production music world to get into that that stuff is just to give you guys a little bit of an idea here, like, and why the sync license model and production music. I don't want to go too far into this, but just a quick bird's eye view of this, right? A sync license, you're going to get paid a big upfront fee and then a very little performance royalty fee. A production music, catalog or production music, underscore work, there's usually a very little or non-existent sync license or upfront fee, but there's a massive back-end fee. And the reason is when you look at a show like The Bachelor, that's like, it's an hour long, right? So probably 42 to 44 minute runtime. If you haven't paid attention before, that show is going to use 40 minutes of music. Like, it's almost wall-to-wall music, and all of that is production music. So that stuff is getting paid the same rate per minute in royalties that a needle drop, which is one license of one song in a scripted series, is getting paid. They're getting paid the same rate, if they're on the same network, per minute. So with production music and the orchestral stuff, you're getting a huge back end, royalty stream. There's just not a lot of upfront. And then, on the song needle drop sync licensing place, it's it's not a big back end, but there's a decent upfront fee. So my advice to everybody is to diversify and take advantage of as many revenue streams as you can. But
that's great advice. So I want to be conscious of our time. We've just got a few more minutes left. I know we could keep talking, but let me just quickly open some of the questions that were submitted before.
Sure.
How do I pitch to Burnett Publishing? I think James already answered that by dropping his email in the chat. By the way, Mike said, RIP your inbox.
Yep. Hilarious.
So, you know what? That actually leads me to a question I had for you, which is, are there any red flags that would discourage you from working with an artist? Maybe something important to hear for those who are getting emailed.
Yeah, we started to get into that as far as like being self-aware of your content. Here are the other red flags, things that are definitely going to make me skip, skip working with somebody. One, if you don't have your rights holder information clear, like if you don't have that information, I can't work with you. Like if we have to go on a wild goose chase to try and find out who your co-writer is, who the other 6 publishers on the piece of music is, who owns the master, if we don't have that information, it's a non-starter. We can't license.
Have all your metadata together, folks. Who owns the publishing? Who owns the writing? Who owns the copyright? Who owns the master?
If it's not you, if it's not you, make sure that you're providing contact info for those people, because I don't know who Bobby Joe is, who's also the co-writer. Like, I'm not going to be able to look him up. So you know what I mean. So it's I'm going to need some sort of contact info. Also, I'd prefer, not everybody has these, not everybody does these, but split sheets are gold when it comes to this stuff, because everybody's cool with even splits until something is licensed or until something is released. And then you've got somebody who comes out of the woodwork and goes, actually, I did 55%. And, unless we have a split sheet that says, no, you signed this and you agreed to this, then it's a big, argument, and friendships are ruined. So, that's just
definitely written agreements. So just FYI, before I ask you one final question, anyone who's interested in signing up for IndieFlow or getting more information, there is a call to action button on our Crowdcast today. So go ahead and hit that if you're interested. And let's get one more question here from the chat, from the questions previously submitted. I think we've answered what's the best way to get licensed. Reaching out, trying to get a good question for your last question. What? Is there any money in licensing music for older mediums like radio and cable TV? Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Cable TV, we do a ton of work in cable TV. Radio, we don't do so much. Actually, barely any. But there are other. I know like Warner Chappell and like Sony ATV. They do a ton of radio and like local news stuff. So there's definitely money in those places. It's not something we usually seek out. It's not our clientele. But cable TV is a huge one for us. And I mean, we do a ton with Discovery and A&E and all those folks. So yeah, I
Okay.
will say that like the reality TV stuff tends to have really small budgets as far as licensing songs go. Scripted stuff has bigger budgets for licensing shows. Reality stuff is because they use production music mainly, and that's where their money went.
I have another question to you about, in preparation, because a lot of artists are asking, like, basically, how do I get my music synced? And I think we've answered that through contacting music supervisors directly or reaching out to a sync agency,
Mhm,
and how to prepare for that, being
mhm,
self-aware of what your
mhm.
music could be used for. So maybe doing the research yourself of like, I see music like mine in these different TV shows or these different advertisements.
It can be
Having
as simple as that. It can be as
your
simple as like, I hear stuff like this on TV. Like I hear stuff
Mhm.
like my stuff. You don't have to go granular and be like, "Oh, I've heard like a song exactly like this in these 7 places, and here's the music supervisor and all that." That's our job. We'll do that. But like, if you're like, "Hey, I feel like this is, I'm hearing stuff like this, you know, um, uh, you know, being used in the world, like,
It's
that's
out
fine.
there.
Just send
So
it over.
along with split sheets, I just want to ask you this question. Along with
Mhm.
split sheets, making sure you have written agreements about your music, how important is it to also have an instrumental of a mass of a track?
This is where I was going next. Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah.
Tell
So
me
so
everything.
instrumental is huge, huge. So
It's
if
a
you're
must,
producing your
right?
own content, just do an acapella that's vocal only and do an instrumental, no vocals. And if you're working with a producer or you're working with a mix engineer or whatever, just ask them to do that every single time. It's something that you can never go wrong with.
Get
Um,
in that practice, artist. Get in that
do
practice.
it, do
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So,
Also, be aware of your production, of your recording quality. This is something that is it's in the red flag space for me. If your stuff sounds like an obvious demo, it's a waste of everybody's time because they're
mm,
not going to place it. If you're not great at producing your own stuff, but you're good at writing and you're able to track the stuff, you just aren't a great mixer, go to a place like soundbetter.com, reach out to
awesome.
other people and just spend a little bit of money to get the mix, you
Where it
know,
needs to be.
where it needs to be.
Mm.
Um, then, the last thing I would say is artwork. Artwork is great. Even if it's an unreleased track, just put a picture, give us a picture of you or something
And
because
what's the best way to submit this music?
yeah, I
We ask
saw was it somebody mentioned disco. Disco is wonderful. Yeah, Melissa mentioned disco.
Yeah.
Disco's great. We use disco all the time. I love it. It's usually how we're pitching stuff also. So yeah, I think it's wonderful. But it doesn't matter if you have a SoundCloud link, if you just want to send a Dropbox link, any of that, that's fine. But
An
um,
IndieFlow private playlist link. You can also create a playlist by
IndieFlow private
IndieFlow.
playlists. I love those.
Right. You've got them as well. So
Yep.
cool. All right.
Uh,
Raphael
yeah.
says, what is Disco? Disco is a music sharing platform. You can just Google disco music and you will find it. And it's something that a lot of people in the sync world do use. So
Yeah.
any you've stayed 4 minutes over, James. We are so appreciative of all the information and value you've shared today. Any last words of encouragement, guidance, advice, or feedback for the
Well,
artists?
I do want to say this is something that I've been telling our artists and people that have been come on to work with us recently and everything. is that this is like we're kind of in a new renaissance with music. There's never been a better time to be an indie musician, and so having something like IndieFlow is really great because historically the top 10% of people earning money, the top 10% of earners um, in all of music that was consumed, like radio music and stuff, it was made of 40 artists typically every year, which is where like top 40 came from. It's like you just play the same 40 songs, and they're the top 10% of earners. Now you look at like streaming statistics, and Spotify released these numbers last year that said like the top 10% of all streams was over 43,000 artists. So
Wow.
we don't have a top 40 anymore. We have a top, almost 50,000, like, so
Wow.
this is great. And so there's never been a better time to be an indie musician. And, so release content, that's a way to make money. If you can own your master, do that. If you can own your publishing, do that. But, if you want to get into other revenue streams, you might want to share, and find a sync agent, find a publisher, find get into production music if you're able to produce your own instrumental underscore beds and stuff, like, diversify.
Diversify. I
That's the
love
only way
that.
you're going to be able to make this a career, but it's a great time to be a musician.
James, thank
Yeah.
you so much. That was a beautiful diversify. I love that as the last kind of like closing sentiment. And yes, again, if you're interested in signing up for IndieFlow or getting some more information, you can leave an emoji in the chat or click the call to action link. We do have an incredible 45% off discount just today for those of you attending this industry session. And we are going to have more of these. James, again, thank you so much for being our first guest of our IndieFlow industry sessions.
Oh, no problem. My pleasure.
And for sharing your email with us. What?
Yeah, no problem.
I hope the artists use it in the most professional way possible. So.
Yes, please. No email abuse.
No email abuse, y'all. Come on. All right, y'all. Okay, thank you all so much. James is going to say goodbye, and we are signing off in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye.